So late last year, Kensington released this. This is the Expert Mouse TB800 EQ trackball, and I reviewed it here on PCWorld. But unfortunately, quickly after launch, people reported issues with the sensor, and Kensington pulled it from shelves. But now Kensington is back with the updated version, which is the TB900. They sent it over to me for review, and quickly after learning what changes they made and using it for about a week, it was very apparent that they pretty much are the same device. And luckily, because of that, I feel okay reviewing the TB900 as if I have been using it since December. So in this video, I want to go through some of the long-term testing things that I did, compare and contrast, and I will note where the TB900 actually does differ. But for the most part, these are essentially the same device. So let's dig in a long-term review. So here we have both trackballs. On the left is the TB800 that I've been using since December, and on the right is the TB900. I'm not going to compare it to the older trackball that I had in the previous video. If you want to see how it compares to that, go watch the old review. Here I'm going to compare and contrast my experiences with both devices. And first up is the looks. I mean, you can kind of tell, like, this pretty much is the same device when it comes to the ergonomics, the buttons, the placement, everything about that is pretty much the same. There are a couple noticeable differences. They have updated the design so that the top button row on the newer one actually has a little bit more of a grayish color to it. So it just pops just a little bit more off the black than the original TB800. And to tell you the truth, I prefer the black, but I understand why they switched to having something that was a little bit more noticeable against the black. But, you know, whatever, it's not a deal breaker for me. The only other difference visually between the two is mainly on the bottom. They moved the placement for some of the verbiage, which is not a big deal, whatever. But really, the thing that I was surprised to see is that the center of this ball down here actually had a little bit of a grip to it, which, you know, added to the friction when it was on the table so it didn't wiggle. They took that away with this new TB900, and I'm not sure why. It might be a stability thing or something, but in my time using it on a desk mat, I had no issues. This thing is grippy enough, even on this this kind of wood table that we have here. Like, I'm trying to push on it. It's not really moving too much. Is it that different compared to the 800? Is it, like, yes, maybe the 800 is a little more superior when it comes to, like, not being able to get pushed around, but, like, I don't think it's that big of a difference. Kensington did not mention why they made this change, but, you know, maybe it has something to do with the sensor. I'm not quite sure. The most major hardware change is actually underneath the balls themselves. This is the reason why they had initially pulled the TB800 from shelves, is because of the sensor not having the ability to read when you use the ball from a specific angle. So they moved from a single sensor solution on the TB800 to now a dual sensor solution on the TB900. Now, I never actually had an issue with detecting the trackball movement of the TB800. I mean, I've been using it since December, and I have not done that, and it's mostly because the way I use it is pretty much from the top. The issue was with if you used it with your finger more towards the front of the ball, and I'm wondering if it was because there was a difference in a rotation this way versus this way. So, like, I mainly use it like this, and I've been using it since December with no issue at all. And honestly, I can't tell the difference with the new one. It is still precise. It still works very well. Like, technically it is better, and I'm sure technically it's able to read the movement from more positions, but the way I use it, it feels just the same. And the last hardware change that I do want to note is the clickiness, or I should say the buttons actually have a little bit of a weird creaky sound to them. Now, in the initial review period back in December, it wasn't that big of a deal, and it actually wasn't that different than the older one, so it didn't really stand out to me. But over time, I have noticed just how kind of creaky the buttons are. And luckily, the TB900 is a night and day difference, so I'm going to do just a little bit of an audio test so you hear the difference between the TB800 and the TB900 in terms of button. So the actual clicks themselves are very similar, obviously, but it's that little extra creak to it. Now, it's not horrible, and like I said, it actually was prevalent on the older Kensington trackballs that I've used, so it didn't really stand out. But over time, it did feel like it did kind of get worse. Kensington is saying that they have updated it and changed it for this new one, and so far, I am not hearing any of that creakiness. Maybe it'll come in time, which at that point, maybe I'll leave a pinned comment on the video or something. But so far, that is actually a welcome change. So that's actually pretty much the only differences that Kensington has told me about, at least between the 800 and the 900. So a couple changes, a couple upgrades, some small, some major, but for the most part, it is the same device. So now let me get into some of the things of using the 800 for long term that will apply to the 900 as well. And the first thing to note, of course, is the ergonomics, because that's a reason why a lot of people get a trackball is for the ergonomics. And initially in my original review, I compared it to the old trackball, which had a little bit more of a slope and also came with a wrist rest. I was worried about losing the wrist rest, but the way that my hand is naturally placing on here feels really nice. And sure, it's not like a vertical mouse where I'm able to get into that full handshake position, but for the most part, when I am resting my hand on it, I'm definitely in a more natural position than with like a mouse. So with this new design, they have obviously added more buttons compared to the older version. There's now the two scroll wheels on the side. You have the ability to change the scroll wheel in the center to be either smooth or have a nice little resistance to it. And after using it since December, I have found myself not really using as many buttons across the top. I actually have this one up here on the left mapped to muting any of the microphones that I have, which is nice in case I need to cough and I'm in the middle of recording. So I use that one all the time. And then I map these to media control buttons, but I actually haven't really ended up using them a ton. The center wheel I've kept at a vertical scroll, but the side wheel I changed to a horizontal scroll, and I thought I'd use it a lot more in video editing, which I have been doing lately, but I almost forget that it's there, unfortunately. Like I think I need to maybe force myself with muscle memory to kind of get more reps to use the vertical, or I'm sorry, the horizontal scroll, because it is nice that it is there, but I don't use it, and if anything, it's been a downside because every once in a while I'll accidentally roll it with a finger or kind of like graze across it. And by default, it goes to zoom. So if I'm on like a web page, all of a sudden like my web page is zooming a little bit and I'm not quite sure why. So I've changed it to the vertical, or I'm sorry, the horizontal scroll. I'm going to try to force myself to use it. But either way, the one on the left continues to be a non-starter for me because the way that I like to place my trackball is pretty much right here. So the bottom of the button lines up with the bottom of the keyboard. This is not the keyboard I use, but it is a 100% keyboard so that I can actually just move my thumb and hit the enter key here. So for the most part, I turn off this scroll wheel, which is just a little toggle here on the bottom. Now in my original review, I did lament the fact that it came with a USB Type-C dongle. And I'll say I'm primarily using this in desktop use, and I do not have as many USB-C ports on my motherboard compared to USB Type-A. So I know I could just get a little adapter and plug it in, but it does actually feel bad that by default I am using up one of the USB-C ports. I would assume Kensington had made this decision because they wanted to accommodate laptop users, and I have used this actually at one of the trade shows this year. So it was nice to have it with USB-C, but I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about that one. Either way, it's nice that it does tuck away if I need to travel. It definitely keeps it safe. And I have not had any connectivity issues using it on my desk with my PC right off to the side. No issues with dropouts, anything like that in my use. And one of the last major things to talk about hardware-wise is the battery life, because in December, in the time that I had the device, you can't really get a good feel of actually how long it's going to last and how many times you're going to be recharging it. And I can say that after using it since December, I've not kept track officially of how many times I've had to plug it in to recharge it, but I think it's only been like once or twice that whole time. Like this thing, the battery life is awesome. Like I never thought about it, and it was only like I said, once or twice that I would look down on the little screen here and it would kind of give a little flashing indicator to be like, oh, what is that? Oh, that's the battery icon. It happens so few times that I would have to look down and be like, what is that thing? Because the battery life just lasted so long. So I have no issues with the battery life on this device. But an issue I do have is with the onboard memory. Now, I mentioned this in my original review that I've actually been learning to use Linux. Which is really nice, and yes, you can do some things to configure the trackball in Linux. But ultimately, if they had onboard memory on this device, I'd be able to save a profile in their Kensington Connect software, have it locally, and then transfer over to plugging it into a Linux device. The only other way around being able to have something portably like that is to have a native Linux app, which I don't think they're going to do, or have the actual configuration done through a browser, which would be really nice. There's a lot of companies that are moving to that kind of approach, and I strongly urge Kensington to do that because that is really nice, especially for people who are trying to use it on multiple platforms or with multiple devices. Maybe they didn't quite have the time to implement it in this updated version, but I hope for the next iteration they seriously implement it. But overall, having used this device since December, I am still in love with it. It is a major upgrade over the previous wireless trackball that I was using, and it is just easily slid into my life as my favorite trackball that I've ever used, and it's awesome. I continue to recommend it, and even though there are a little bit of tweaks based off of having time since December to actually use it, I still feel just as excited now as I did then. And I actually genuinely was bummed that they had to take the TB800 off of sale, which was the good decision to make for sure, but I was bummed because I know a lot of people were very excited to start using this. I continue to get comments on that original video of like, oh hey, why isn't it out? Why didn't they release it? I thought this thing was available. So I'm glad they have the TB900 now in the market, and they're going to be able to reach new people and have more experiences with it. Well, speaking of reaching the market, I guess I spoke a little too soon. I forgot that the PR rep actually emailed me recently and said there was a delay in shipping the new trackball, and it won't be available in the channel till later in Q3. I did confirm with them to say, hey, is there any more changes to the experience? Can I review this now and say that it is the same exact product that's going to show up in later in Q3? And they assured me that yes, it is. So I guess you'll have to wait just a little bit longer to get your hands on this trackball, but I do think it is worth it. And at $130, but like I have no issues other than the onboard memory thing. It still bugs me. Hopefully next time. Speaking of next time, maybe I'll see you next time in a video reviewing another trackball, either by Kensington or Elecom or somebody else. So if you want to see more reviews about trackballs, then subscribe here on PCWorld, and we'll see you in the next one.